All right, I'm going to go ahead and get us started here. First of all, again, just appreciate you guys taking the time to jump on. Obviously, you guys have busy lives, so if at any point you need to hop off or you got other things going on, totally understand. These are recorded and sent out as well, so that you can access them if you think it's interesting or anything like that. Um, but again, we'll try to keep it as informative as and as brief as we possibly can to make sure that you guys hopefully get something out of it. But again, I'm sure a lot of people it slipped through the cracks after what was a pretty busy weekend for all of us. So what we're going to talk about today is kind of to be quite honest, a little bit of a taboo subject in terms of the car ride home. And I'm sure all of us as parents have had ones that we felt were great, ones that we thought were not so great, and a lot of it might depend on the result of the game or how things went. Um, so again, we're going to try to help give some experiences in terms of trying to navigate some of those situations that can be at times uncomfortable or difficult to deal with for you and your kid as well. So our goal of trying to just open up some dialogue about this is that we can hopefully get players to enjoy the car ride home rather than endure it. And hopefully the same goes for you guys. We don't want it to be something that's really delicate and tough to manage. And again, we're going to share some data, some experiences, some research um, from a wide variety of contexts. But at the same time, just want to acknowledge that there's not necessarily one right way to do things, especially on a topic like this, because obviously everybody's kid is slightly different. All of us as parents and adults are different as well. So, but this is just to give you some hopefully ideas or context in terms to how your child might be perceiving these car rides homes as well. So the need for change, and I think this is kind of just highlighting why it's important that we do talk about a subject like this and even amongst parents is share best practices and things like that through things that you might have thought worked well with your children or didn't work well, and making sure that we try to support each other for the betterment of the situation for all the kids. But just to give you an idea, one of the reasons, the biggest reason we probably wanted to talk about this is that there is a poll out there that I don't know if anyone's familiar with. We did share it on a previous um, meeting, but there's a poll done by Working with Parents in Sport. And that's all that this company does is research and do resources and things of that nature, trying to support parents to obviously, hopefully, help their children in the future. And this survey was a wide variety of successful college athletes, but mostly of the Division I caliber. Um, and the alarming thing to kind of point out from this survey was the fact that the number one response to those players' worst memory in their youth sport days was the car ride home. So while it might seem like a trivial thing and something that maybe isn't all that necessary to really talk about, sometimes it's 5 minutes, sometimes it's an hour, whatever the case might be. This is what athletes are telling us. Um, and that's once they're done and removed from that experience and don't have to deal with it anymore, that's still the lingering negative memory within their mind. So, giving that some context, obviously, the benefit in a club like ours is that those players that are maybe not all of them, but top end Division I athletes probably are doing a lot more traveling than most of us as parents from within our club or within our local area in general. So, while an hour or two might seem like a long distance, some of these parents that are kind of being referenced in this survey might be driving across the country or flying or whatever the case might be to get to games. So with that in mind, just kind of posing the question, is that less time to get things off your chest, or is it easier to avoid making things worse? I don't know. I don't think there's a anything that I could find that was super clear and provides clarity on that. But I think at the very least, again, it does maybe limit some of the damage that we can do. It might also obviously take away some moments that can be positive, but um, just a lens to kind of think about things through as well. So I'm just going to open up to see if anyone wants to throw in the chat here. What are some of the benefits do they think of kids playing team sports, or why did they, when your child was 5, 6, 7, 8, regardless of what the origin story might have been, what did you think the value was going to be um, in your child playing team sports? I'll just give everyone a minute. If you don't feel comfortable sharing, that's totally okay. But just interested in some perspective and seeing if we can find some common ground. Social aspect, learning to work together, sharing and being a good teammate, having a similar social network, playing as a team. Right. So I think I'll give about 30 more seconds. Having fun, it's a big one, Matt. Rush. How to be a good teammate, learn the value of hard work, physical outlet. Okay. So feel free to keep going if you want, but I'm going to move us forward. But I think it's important that the matter, and not saying that we need to be stuck on this, but recognizing that things are not always going to be perfect for our children in a team sports context. When there's a competition, when there's, in most cases, a winner and a loser on a Saturday or a Sunday, recognizing that there is adversity and things like that within it, but kind of taking us back to the benefits that, in most cases, I think just through playing team sports, all of our kids are going to get. So this is just a graphic, and again, it's going to align with a lot of what you guys said. I'm not going to go into every little detail. I'll share this with you guys so that you have it as well if you'd like. But again, some of the biggest benefits, and this is backed by more research than myself or Zach here are doing in our day-to-day research, in our day-to-day jobs. Excuse me. Um, Stay physically fit, keeping the weight under control, right? Kind of aligning with that, improving cardiovascular endurance, improving academic results, which I'm sure some people in this room do have an idea that there is studies that show a link between athletes and academic success as well. Not to say that it's always the case. And if you don't want to take me at my word for it, Zach here is a school psych by trade. So I'm sure he's got far more details on that than me. Increased self-esteem and self-confidence, improves concentration, keeps them out of drugs, trouble. I know growing up that not that drugs was an issue, but just being so busy to stay out of trouble and not kind of get into things was a big thing in my household growing up. Kind of going back to the academic studies, decrease in dropout rate, right? So obviously making sure that our kids at the very least go on and get their high school education done and hopefully further on than that. Life skills, again, a lot of what you guys alluded to in terms of um, playing as a team, collaboration, all of the things that we discuss all the time. Reducing stress and depression, again, just whether that be through the social aspect or in general, having an outlet. I know that someone referenced that. Leadership skills, and then improving mental and moral qualities. So again, it's a great way, obviously, I think, for all of the kids to have that physical outlet to develop a healthy lifestyle, whether that be on the field, off the field. And I don't feel like we need to go into too much detail. I feel like everyone is pretty aware of a lot of the benefits that go into it. But again, just reframing everything we do through the kids' lens and why we got into it in the first place. So I'll pose another question here and I'll give everyone about 60 to 90 seconds. Why do we think that our kids play or enjoy sports? So obviously we talked about why we got them into it. Why do they stay in it? Just something to consider here. I'll give everyone a little bit of time. If you feel comfortable, feel free to drop it in the chat. Being competitive, their teammates, making friends. Give everyone about 30 more seconds here if anyone else wants to go pro, right? Passionate about the game, friends on the team, too much FIFA. They enjoy it. Okay, and it probably all to some degree comes back to that, but we really want to focus on why they enjoy it because she loves it. Sweet. All good answers. Again, feel free to keep going. I'm going to move us forward, but again, this is everything about this is all just about sharing and collaborating because everybody's kid and your own relationships are different as well with your kids. Okay, so moving on from that, again, I'll open it up, give about 60 seconds, 90 seconds here into why do you think kids quit sports? So at the end of the day, I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard me discuss the fact that there's an alarming statistic out there that about 10 years ago, the average age for kids to stop playing soccer was 13. And more, maybe more alarming than that was the fact that 75% of kids would stop playing by the age of 13. Obviously, we know there's a lot of reasons into why that is, which we'll talk about here. But the scarier statistic is for all of us as parents and people in this world is that that stat is actually going younger. And that 75% mark still reigns true, but that age is now 11. So, again, I'll give everyone 60 more seconds or so just to kind of think about why kids quit sports. Too much pressure to excel, pressure to specialize earlier and earlier. Great answers. You need boys and girls, right? Other interest is 100% a part of it, Kevin. Obviously, we need to try to do whatever we can in our power if we really value what they're going to get out of it to try to not take those experiences away from them, but make sure that their relationship with the game is strong enough to kind of keep them going. Not having fun or feeling like they're not growing in the sport. All great answers. We have about 10, 15 more seconds here to see if anything else comes through. Okay, I'm going to keep us moving. If you're typing, feel free to still drop it in. Oh, one more coming in. Drugs, alcohol, again, other interests. I'll use that word. Not that those are things that we obviously want them to get into, but other distractions maybe is a better word. So this chat here, this chart, sorry, not chat, reasons why kids do it, right? Or why they stay in it, why they enjoy it, to have fun, to make friends, to improve skills, to challenge themselves, to take a part of something they enjoy, to release stress, exercise, play within a team. For some kids, it is about winning. And to be like their role model. Someone mentioned FIFA, right? How many kids here would love to emulate Messi or Alex Morgan or Megan Rapinoe or whoever it may be, right? Those are all real genuine reasons that kids stay within the sport. And then obviously reasons why players quit, perceived lack of confidence, right? And we use that word a lot. Zach can tell you here for multiple years now, we talk about kids' needs in terms of, and not just kids' needs, people's needs as well. And if you can relate this to your everyday life as well, we talk about autonomy, belonging, and competence being the ABCs that all of our players need. But zooming out, all of us need in our everyday lives too to feel fulfilled. So again, if players don't feel like they're developing, someone referenced, that's going to lead to maybe a reason to quit the sport as well. They aren't respected, right? Whether that be teammates, coaches, whatever the case might be. They don't get on with the coach. Too much emphasis on winning, right? Too much pressure was mentioned. No longer interested in the sport. Again, as they get older, there's a million different things that will take attention away. And those are challenges that we have to deal with. But again, trying to make sure that hopefully we can create a good enough experience that there's an attachment there that doesn't get lost. Not enough playing time It's too competitive. Again, kind of alluding to pressure, alluding to competence as well there. It's not fun anymore. I'm sure all of us recognize our kids change every single day. So recognizing that they love it at 8, if it's not fun for the next year, 2 years, or even a short period of time, they might not enjoy it anymore. That's a real concern that we have to deal with. And then again, pressure to perform. So a lot of those things that we can control in some capacity is kind of why we've started having these discussions. So our belief, again, we repeat this over and over and over again in all of these meetings, is that we believe that the players should be the main actor in all of this. Again, you guys as adults are taking time out of your busy schedules to hopefully get something out of conversations like this. But ultimately, everything that we do as a club, as coaches, as parents, is about trying to make sure that each kid is the driving factor within this. And I'm not going to pretend that we're ever going to get everything right. That's never going to happen. Um, Even if our beliefs are right and they're put in the right spot, trying to get total consistency across more than 30 soccer teams on a travel level is something that's really difficult when you have coaches that have different personalities and different levels of experience. But it's a journey that we're all on with everything that we try to do about being about the individual. So it's not about the team, it's not about the club, it's really about making sure that individual is put first. And again, it comes back to those ABCs that we talked about in autonomy, belonging, and competence, and trying to make sure that all three of those exist to the best of our ability. Okay, for that to be the case, kind of going back to how we started this, it's important that we have to listen to what they have to say, right? We can't just say that and put it on a PowerPoint and say, we're all about the players, we're all about player development, but then do what's convenient or easy for us, or even in some capacities, take everything from parents and try to just please parents. Um, we have to have guardrails as well, just to make sure that if this is what we truly believe is best for the majority of kids that we serve, not that it's always going to be perfect for everybody, it's impossible, that we have to take on that feedback. We have to take on what we can learn from negative experiences, what we can learn from positive experiences. Again, make sure that the center of what we do is about them. So what they're saying, and just to give an idea, this is, most of you would have seen the survey that went out earlier today. That survey is very much based off of a survey that we discussed last month in this meeting. And we geared that one more towards sideline behavior, but there's a company called Soccer Parenting. And if you go to soccerparenting.com, there's a lovely woman named Sky Bruce, who's been doing this for a long, long time. She was a former Division I player. She actually played professionally here in Philadelphia on the women's side, a couple decades ago at this point when there was a league. But everything that she does is around kind of collecting data and making sure that not just parents are being served, but making sure like that now clubs and coaches trying to create those bridges and relationships more so than parents are on one sideline, coaches are on the other sideline, and from each sideline thinks they know better than the other one. Trying to mend those relationships and kind of create that bridge so that we can all better serve each individual kid in the group as well. But so what this survey showed, and it was a survey of 8 to 16-year-olds of all different levels, all across the country. But the key takeaways from it were that players would rather hear nothing than to hear criticism after a game. So I'm sure we've all probably made a mistake or two once in a while. Our kid gets in the car, maybe it was a tough game, maybe we're taking some of our own frustration out on them, and our first thing might be, well, why did you do that? Or why did how did you miss that play or that ball or that decision or whatever the case might be? Again, this is data that shows that players would rather hear nothing than criticism. And again, I'm not saying that these are hard and fast. Every kid is different. but I think at the very least, it's important that we at least consider what the majority of kids are saying. With that in mind, when it comes to criticism and feedback, they're much more responsive to hearing what coach has to say. Um, and the last thing that was a big takeaway from that survey is that they agreed that future performance was more dependent on their own thoughts and motivation, as well as encouragement from their coach, not parental coaching. So again, I know that sometimes those things can be challenging to hear. And I'm not one that is going to sit here and tell anybody how to parent their kid. I just simply won't do it. You know your kids inside and out significantly better than anyone else is going to. Um, and again, in general, I'm not going to be someone that sits here and says, you can't do this, you can't do that. Rather, I'd like to maybe just offer a different perspective from not just our beliefs or my beliefs, but from the player's perspective as well. Apologies. So the parent perspective, right, about the car ride home. Just talked about the player perspective, but the parent perspective sometimes can be that the car ride home is a teachable moment, right? They get off the field, you feel like you can help them. It was a simple thing. How much harm could it really do, right? And sometimes it might be based around trying to understand decisions that the coach made or what the coach is teaching or whatever the case might be, right? Again, both of those can be completely well intended. But I'm sure we can all, if it doesn't happen every day, remember a time where we asked our kid when they get home from school what they learned, and it's, oh, I don't know, right? That's not because they didn't learn anything. That's just the state of mind that they're in, right? They're mentally, physically exhausted from sitting at a desk all day, waking up early, being sick, whatever it might be. Okay, so again, back to the player perspective, physically and emotionally exhausted. Probably even more so than in school, right? They just ran their butts off for however many minutes, 60, 70, 80, 90, whatever it might be, depending on your age group. Um, right? They're taking in, whether we want to believe it or not, they're taking in a ton of information between hearing parents talking on the sideline, between hearing coaches on the sideline, between trying to perceive what's happening around them the whole time in 360 degrees and make decisions based on what they're being taught. It's a lot. Um, so in reality, same as when a kid comes home from school, it's probably the least teachable moment. So we're not sitting here telling you to not try to help and guide your child, right? If your child wants that, by all means, what what we're trying to hopefully create a picture of, and this is something we have to do in coaching all the time, is recognize when that moment should occur. And the car ride home is certainly not it. Um, that's the only point that we're really trying to drive home today. Again, ultimately, you can do what you would like with this information. Um, but coaching, in my perspective, isn't just about spewing all of the information and knowledge that we have as adults that have played the game and coached the game for however many years. It's about recognizing when the right time is to use that information so that it actually sticks and transfers onto the player. And it's the same as a parent. And obviously, you guys, just like coaches, have all the experience in the world. And sometimes it can just be tricky to navigate that or separate those two emotions. So potential outcomes of obviously having these conversations on a car ride home, right? Again, if we're trying to figure out why the coach was doing something or what the coach was teaching, and the kid says, I don't know, or nothing, or something relatively dismissive, it doesn't mean that's the truth, for one. But again, and not asking you to not trust your kid, right? We need to have that safeguard there and all of that. But at the same time, what we don't want to do is that dismissive comment end up being tainting a negative opinion of the coach, when in reality, that's not necessarily what happened or what didn't happen, right? And I think ultimately all this creates is a frustrated player because they're sitting in the back of the car with their water bottle between their feet, more than likely wanting a Frosty or an ice cream cone or something along those lines, right? And instead, we're talking about the game that's over, and a frustrated parent, right? Because either your kid might be agitated and you're frustrated because you're trying to teach them and guide them and help them, and it's the most well-intended thing in the world, but it might not be the right moment. And then again, you're getting information from your kid that's after they're physically and emotionally exhausted, and then doing what you will with that information. And obviously that can lead to you being frustrated as well, right? So ultimately, especially after the game, the car ride home, what your child really wants is a parent, right? They want you to be their mom, their dad. They don't want, especially after a game, a second coach or a third coach or a fourth coach in some cases, right? So just a little thought experiment. And again, not to say that it's exactly the same, right? But just to give some, at least a thought provoking exercise, I'll call it, is just imagine you're a writer, you're working on a book, an article, whatever it might be, right? And you have a deadline or whatever the case might be. There's some element of pressure there. And the whole time you're writing that, people are yelling at you to write faster, write better, right? I'm sure we all recognize that's coaches, that's parents, that's whoever it is on game day that, again, might be well intended and the information might be right, but the timing, the delivery, all might not be there, right? So while they're trying to take in all this information, do all of this and make decisions, they're being pulled in a million different directions, right? So you're writing, you have people yelling at you, and when you're finally done, those same people follow you home, letting you know you could have done better, right? So after a long day of work, your boss, your superior, is following you home into your car, telling you how much better you could have been today, right? So just letting that kind of sink in and thinking about how you would feel. Not that it's an exact comparison, right? Because hopefully the kids don't deal with the same types of pressures that all of us deal with as adults, and having all of those responsibilities. But at the same time, through their lens, they don't know what that looks and feels like. So my opinion thinking about that is just that all of us, coaches, parents, referees, adults in general, can be better, can be more thoughtful about, again, just the moment, the timing, the delivery, all of that. Right. So some things to kind of guide the car ride home, right? Simply and shortly, avoid being the one to bring up the game or performance. If your kid brings it up, we'll talk about that. But again, as the adult, don't be the one to make the game carry over from the game to the car ride, right? Don't be the reason your kid is taking home their work, right? If you feel like your child could have a conversation, talk to your child about rules for the road or a post game routine. Talking to Zach, his dad had three questions. It was, did you have fun? Are you hungry? Are you thirsty? Right. And I'm sure based off of those, they decided what they were going to do or whatever the case might be. But in general, you might want to develop some sort of routine. Maybe it's getting ice cream. Maybe it's doing whatever the case might be. Again, you guys know your children best, but just maybe even thinking about having a conversation about what your child likes, doesn't like, about how previous conversations have gone in the car ride home. Right. And if your child does bring it up, this is the advice that I would give. Again, do with it what you'd like. Shift focus away from outcomes and on to lessons that can be taken away. Right. And to take us all the way back about why kids get into sports, why kids enjoy sports, why kids quit sports. It's bigger than the scoreboard. Right. It's not about the result. It's about the outcomes and what we want the kids to get out of it, and trying to put that hat on and use those lessons that might be learned from it that aren't about the game. It's not he should have been 6 inches or 6 yards to the left, right? But it's what adversity can teach. It's what, you know, collaboration can teach. It's what hard work can teach, whatever the case might be, right? Was the player trying to do what the coach was asking? What can they take away from their attempts if it didn't come off exactly right? Right? All the things that as coaches we're also trying to do, because just because it didn't work for an 8-year-old, if they made the right decision when they're 12, they can probably do what they couldn't do at 8. So it's making sure that we're not going jumping straight to, well, it needs to work or it didn't work, so it needs to change. It doesn't need to change sometimes. Sometimes we just need to be okay with it not working when they're 8, 9, and 10, because when they're 11 and 12, if they're now not making that decision because they were scared out of it, for lack of a better phrase, then they're going to put a ceiling on themselves, right? And then again, we get back to perceived lack of confidence or whatever the case might be that are reasons kids leave the game. So less is more, right? Just a little silly acronym that I love to throw out. It's listen, empathize, support, sincerity, right? Again, I'm sure all of us do this all of the time with our kids, right? And some moments are easier to do it than others, right? But if this can be a reminder to just the delicacy of each player and each kid after a game, um, then I hope that does a trick. Okay. Hopefully, we all know who this is. If not, this is Christian Pulisic, okay, who is potentially going to be, if he's not already, the best male player this country's ever produced. Um, he's played at the highest levels. He's playing with AC Milan in Italy. He's won the Champions League with Chelsea. So again, peak of the peak, and probably had the most pressure at the youngest age of any player in our country to kind of make it to the top. So with that in mind, and I know somebody kind of jokingly said their kid wants to be pro. Well, if we're talking about Christian Pulisic and the standards and levels that he had to be at, it must have been different for him, or so we would probably all like to think. Okay, I'm just going to share this video if I can get it to play. And this was giving me a little bit of trouble. So I'm going to share this video. Again, this is Sky Bruce, formerly Sky Eddie Bruce, who runs, Soccer Parenting, and Mark Pulisic, who is obviously Christian Pulisic's dad, who was actually a former pro player and coach himself. So I'm just going to let this video that's about 2 minutes long do the talking for me at this point. Well, apologies. Looks like people are having issues hearing. Okay, let me see what I can do here. Apologies, guys. How can I? Okay. Um, up in a second.
Yeah. You've talked about the car ride home a couple times, and then you just sort of to how you would interact with a Christian. Did you have sort of a philosophy or routine, so to speak, of post games with him?
Yes, we would go to 7-Eleven and get a Doritos and some sports drinks and Slurpees
Awesome.
and ice cream.
Yeah.
So after games, I was looking forward to it more than he was because I knew we'd go and just go get some food and chill out and have fun and go to the movies. That was our post game. We would I wouldn't even want to go near talking about the game because he he needs it's not just about soccer at those ages. I mean, he needs to be a kid.
Yeah.
So I was just very conscious after games. Um, and I knew he would be frustrated at times or he wouldn't think he played well or, and he would just be quiet and sitting there. And at the odd time, he would ask me a question about it. Um, I would just say, hey, tomorrow's a new day. You know, this is life. This is the game. And you just move on and just quickly move away from it. So there were never long discussions or telling him how poor he played. And I mean, why would he want to go back to the field? There's parents after games, they put their kid in the car, they're driving home, and they're just screaming at their kid the whole time. You didn't play good, you don't work, you don't hustle, you don't do this, blah, 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 blah. And the kid's just staring out the window. And he's probably thinking, I don't want to do this. Why do I want to go play a sport when if I don't do well, my parents yell at me, you know?
Okay. Wait 1 second here, because it just takes a second. Okay. Okay, so apologies for the technical difficulties there, but hopefully we all got to kind of hear and take in what Mark Pulisic had to say. And again, I think regardless of where we think our kid lies in terms of ability or anything like that, um, if it was okay for Christian to do that and experience it that way, then I think we can all give ourselves permission to allow our kids to be kids first, like he said, and again, not create a situation where maybe we're making it harder for them to get the courage and the excitement back to go back the next time, right? And after a tough loss on a Saturday, if we trap them in a car and we talk to them about it for 35, 40 minutes, whatever the case might be, then yeah, it might be difficult on Monday to get them to training. Um, and by no means is that to put the blame on anybody. There's a million different reasons why kids stop playing the sports or why they stop enjoying them. But again, our goal is to hopefully eliminate or influence some of those in a positive way. So my recommendation to everybody would just be when in doubt and you're not sure what to say, something along the lines of, I love watching you play. It's positive, it's honest, right? You're not lying to them, you're not sugarcoating it. It's powerful, it's effective, right? So again, I think that's just an easy kind of catch-all phrase. And however you may say it in your own language with your children, I think is fair. But again, if you're unsure how to do it and you catch yourself maybe wanting to go down that rabbit hole with them, then this is a good way to maybe to hold ourselves back. So that's all that I have. Again, I tried to keep it as brief as I possibly could. 40 minutes, I think, is okay. Um, but if anyone has any questions at this point, feel free to drop them in the chat. If you don't and you want to take off, you're more than welcome. Again, appreciate everyone taking the time out of what is a busy time of year, and we're all always busy. But again, for you guys to carve out time to take on information that might be beneficial for your own role in your kid's soccer journey doesn't go unnoticed and really is appreciated, because we want to obviously, again, we want to influence everything that we can in a positive way, recognizing that we're not perfect. We're all human the same way that our kids are, but it means a lot for you guys to just try to get better the same way that we ask our kids and our coaches, and any of our staff too. So again, if you have any questions, feel free, drop them in. If not, you're more than welcome to take off. Absolutely. Thank you for jumping on. Thank you, Jen. Thank you guys. Really, really appreciate it. Again, if you have anything afterwards that, maybe pops into mind, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're doing this to be a resource. So, happy to share insights and whatever best practices we can. This is obviously a difficult one, but, uh, again, between myself, Zach, Dara, everyone involved, we've been around a lot of different experiences with kids and around the game as well. So give it one another minute or so here.